That's a Shame is brought to you by the people who support us over at patreon.com/shamecity.
If you have $1,
$2.
$1 to spare, join us again at patreon.com/shamecity. Please.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities.
Go.
I've fucked, haven't I?
Do it again.
Hello and welcome to another brand new free episode of That's a Shame. My name is Declan. Opposite me in the cyber kind of fashion that we've become so used to, it's Isaac.
Hi, how's it going? I'm Isaac. Very cool.
Is that so? As in the podcast
That's
is very
what
cool.
I go by.
No.
It's like it's a long
A
version
little
of my own.
status that you pop on the end there, just in case anyone was worried.
Feeling fine.
I'm glad that you're here, Isaac. I'm
Thanks
glad
so
that
much.
you're here
Well, I normally am.
well, yeah, exactly. And it would feel strange doing this podcast without you.
Yeah, well,
frankly.
you wouldn't be able to publish it. So
I
it would
wouldn't
just be
know
you talking
what
to your
to do.
computer.
I would be talking to a computer and then just probably doing a tweet saying,
That
"Hey
was fun.
guys, it was all good." But also because I have been sat in my room for the last, honestly, like 5 hours.
Goodness.
if like making today's content.
And it's such a beautiful day as well, isn't it? So you've foregone like...
It's been really nice. But what I've done is I've had my blinds open for the first time
nice.
since I've owned them.
You're getting that D, as you like to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am. I got them in like October,
Uh-huh.
just after we moved in. I say just after. It was about a month after we moved in.
Well, did you have no blinds before?
Yeah, there was no blinds.
So it was just
There was no blinds.
perma-light.
First of all, there was no bed in the room,
That's too much, D.
so I was sleeping in the living room.
Mhm.
And then I got a bed, but I had like a bookcase and then a frame kind of like blocking the window.
Yeah.
Most of it anyway. And
Like
then I finally
in
got some
a
blinds.
vampire movie, or like Will Smith
Exactly.
in that one where he's a legend. You know that one?
Yeah, well, that
He
was
is
sort
legend.
of vampires as well, wasn't it? It was like
Are they
sort of-
vampires?
Sort
Yeah,
of. I think
are.
they are. I think they're supposed to
They're
be in
pandemic
the book anyway.
vampires or something, aren't they?
Yeah, but then when I
R.I.P.
finally
that
got them
dog.
installed, it was at that kind of time of darkness where when I got up for work, it was dark, and when I got home from work, it was dark. So
Oh,
there really was no
the
need
kill
to have them
yourself
open
ones.
ever. Yeah, that's them.
Yes.
So now, thanks to God's great clocks going forward,
Yeah.
there's
Which
lots
people
of
are
light.
furious about once again. I forget every year how, like,
The Peter Hitchens army.
I Googled about a week ago to find out when the clocks changed. And I think I accidentally pressed like my Reddit. I have like a setup for like Reddit search engine when
Yeah.
I need to check on Nerd Thigh Strangler. And it gave me the answer in a thread. But the person, it was like one person on Ask UK was like, when do the clocks change? And the top comment was like, first of all, we need to be signing petitions to stop this mockery every year. But it's the 27th. So angry.
Burying the info underneath
Yeah.
the plea
Right,
so
look,
that
let me
they're
stop you
forced to
there.
read
Let me
it.
sit you down. I don't think you appreciate how loaded that question actually is. All right, why do the clocks have to change? Who's doing it?
Like a little paywall,
Yeah, sad.
which I'm familiar with because I've had to get around a couple today.
Oh yeah, so you've been knee deep in research. You've been diving down the fleshy canal of research.
I've got hyperlinked citations.
Fuck me.
Imagine
MLA.
oh, you better believe it, boy.
Yes.
We're not that fucking Oxford nonsense, are we?
Harvard, get out.
So I've been researching all day, and I have been, like I say, doing so for about 5 hours, and I have been weeping to myself in this room because I thought that this would be like a quick little thing that we could look into, and then each new stone I overturned,
Full of wood
it
lice.
turned out there was all sorts of hilarious. We don't use that word.
You can say contaclumps if you
I
like.
cannot say that word. I legally cannot say that word lest I lose my job.
It's the word of this new season of TAS, season 3.
You should not be proud
Everyone's
to
saying
say
it.
that.
Everyone's saying
No,
it.
that's bad. That is bad publicity.
Damn.
Yeah, and it just kind of got weirder and weirder. And it was a story with which I was kind of vaguely familiar, and
Right.
I think you certainly will be vaguely familiar,
Okay.
and many of the listeners will be familiar.
But if you found a new angle, you've
It's
gone
not a new
deeper than
angle.
anyone before.
I think it's just that nobody quite knew how fucking mad this story was,
Okay.
and specifically just like how how funny literally every person who is involved in this story comes across.
Well, look,
whether they mean to or not.
Edging us silly with your content
I
clumps.
know.
Is it time that we unhinge our jaws and chow down? Get to the core of the clump.
It is, because Isaac, it's a generation defining story. Not in terms of like impact, but I think in terms of delineation. In that, if you say these words to someone that I'm about to say to you, if they were born like around you or me times, even though that's not quite the same, you're quite a bit older than me.
I'm sort of like mid 90s,
early to mid. Then they know exactly what it is. And if you speak to somebody and you say these words to someone born even just 3 or 4 years after, they do not
even
know
just a couple of minutes.
It's really it's frightening. It also is, I think, the most British story ever to have occurred, and it is, of course, I'll tease no longer, the story of John Darwin, the Canoe Man.
Oh, John Darwin, the Canoe Man. Yes, okay. This does ring a bell.
So I've divided this up because it's a saga, right? It's a saga into chapters, okay? And we're calling chapter 1 the background.
Right.
All right. Now, largely, there isn't loads of background. It's a gracefully brief chapter. Yeah. He seems, by all accounts, to have had a largely unremarkable childhood. He went to school, like you and me.
As so many do. He had a mother and father. That's a line from Wicked.
He went to sixth form, like you and me.
King.
No standout events to speak of. He married his wife, Anne, in 1973.
That's fortunate.
Just a few days before Christmas. And then begins what can only be described as one of the most British set of careers you could ever imagine. So I want to pause to play a small game here called Guess the Profesh.
Okay.
Now he had, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to say 4 careers.
Right. That's
his lifetime.
Greedy John,
I know, and you'd think that like
job guzzling John.
Step aside, let someone else have a turn.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that they are extremely British careers that he's had, all of them.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 5 guesses to get as many of them as you can.
Okay. I don't have I need to sort of calibrate my guessing, right? So I'm going to throw out like civil servant.
That's kind of close. Okay. One of his jobs was working for kind of a wing of a government like unit.
Was he like a TV license guy?
No,
Did he drive around in a big canoe, threatening people on the waters for watching CBeebies?
That's kind of, it's not it, but he was sort of close. He was if anything, a more realistic and meaningful version of that, in that he was a prison officer. That was one of the things that he did. So that's one of them.
Okay, so prison officer. Was he did he have a trade? Did he get into the trades at any point?
Like a physical
like
trade,
an electrician, like a bricklayer.
He didn't get into those. No.
Gymnast.
those 3 always going hand in hand. Yeah,
he was a professional Hearthstone player.
Professional Tetris guy.
Let me think. Did he have anything to do with the woods?
He had nothing to do with the woods.
Nothing out in nature. Was he on the bins?
Oh no, he wasn't on the bins. He wasn't on the bins. That is a very British profession, though. I think you've got to think. He thinks of himself as a bit above the working class, right?
Right. Okay.
So
fair.
Sort of more middle class British professions.
Things like accountant.
He was a financial advisor.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
That often just means he worked in a bank, right?
Yeah, he worked. I feel
like if you work in a bank, they just say you're a financial advisor. When the advice you're giving is like the bank is open at 9 o'clock. So I could have googled that.
You do not have that money in your account. So we've got 2 of them now. He was a prison officer. He was a financial advisor /
That's quite disparate already. That's quite a change.
Yep.
Office copysmith. The guy who's in charge of copying things.
No, before all of those, he was a teacher. He was a science and maths teacher. And then, of course, and this is kind of where we get into the meat of things, of course, he also took part in that greatest of British professions, being a landlord.
Oh, how silly of me.
I know.
I guess I've been indoctrinated to the point where I don't see being a landlord as a job, so I didn't think of it as a category that I could have thrown out.
Hang on. You're not saying they don't work hard?
No, I mean... That's the foolishness that I'm recognizing in my previous cucked state. But now I recognise that it's possibly the only job worth doing.
It's like the Ur job.
Yeah.
It's the oldest profession.
That's what they call it.
Yeah, that's right. So he and his wife, who worked in a doctor's surgery,
Mm-hmm.
they were doing the whole, like TikTok landlords. There's that particularly odious guy who's like, you buy low, you rent high.
I hate
that guy.
So much.
They were doing that. That's what they were doing. And because they lived in like Durham, and they were just buying cheap houses and then kind of renting them out for a lot. And it's actually this that started the entire ordeal.
Okay.
Because they bought a couple of houses in a place called Seaton Carew, or Carew, which is like on the Durham coast, for about £200,000.
Right.
And then that was in like the year 2000. And they just could not, for some reason, they weren't renting them out very well.
Okay.
And so they were sort of swimming in debt.
They were failing to be landlords.
Yeah, they really, really were. Even though they divided one of these properties up into 15 bedsits.
Wow.
Which I just don't understand how that's possible. However, it did make the entire ordeal very, very possible. And it was actually, that was 2000 that they took out that mortgage. And it was in 2002 that they started and indeed carried out this process of John Darwin faking his own death.
Yeah, which in hindsight we should have led with people who have no idea about this story. This is about a man faking his own death. I'll add it to the end at the beginning.
So chapter 2 is the disappearance of John Darwin. Okay, and I must regrettably inform you that on the 21st of March, which was a Thursday, 2002, 51-year-old John Darwin was seen heading out to sea in a canoe.
Yeah,
now
that's the way he wanted to go.
One of the low-key funnier aspects of this story that I discovered is that actually what he was in was a kayak. He was not in a canoe at all.
You shouldn't have a kayak on the sea, should you?
But canoe man I don't think you're really supposed to do either of them that far out to sea.
I'm no expert. I think you'd want a big boat on
ship.
The sea. Because the sea is a huge guy.
It's very, very big. There's loads of it.
Little strip of boat with you.
Last week, I think it might have been on the Patreon. You were talking about how it's bigger than space.
Yeah, many are saying this.
But yeah, I think there's just something really funny about the fact that they knew and they reported that it was a kayak. But canoe man is just funnier.
Yeah,
it's just a much funnier word. So another mental part of this is that he was. I mean, for me, this is what would have raised the alarm bells: is that he was seen heading out to sea. That's huge. You see him walking home again.
You see him paddling right back.
No, is that he was seen heading out to sea at 8 a.m.
Right.
Even though he had a night shift at like 9:30 that night, and I'm just like, what? What were you doing? Like, why are you up paddling out to
commuting.
sea? Yeah,
he's commuting back to his job as a landlord, a coastal landlord.
This was during the prison officer stage, the prison officer / landlord stage. Two of our favorite.
He wrote to Alcatraz. He had to sail there.
So, like, the best part of the canoe kayak thing is that they flag it like right at the very beginning. And again, like this guy, he works for the RNLI that we're about to hear from, Mr. Camish.
That's the lifeboats gang.
He says within 2 sentences, he just switches from kayak to canoe. I think it's just some kind of deep-seated kind of British instinct for what would make the funniest headline. Because it wasn't even news. Like, he was the guy reporting for the first ever story about this. And he says, at 1:15 a.m., a double-ended paddle used by people in this kind of kayak was retrieved from the sea near North Gare, not too far from Seaton Carew. If a canoeist loses his oar and cannot retrieve it, he is at the mercy of the sea.
Canoeist is like, if I worked for the RNLI and I had to be their press officer for briefing when people had died, like, you would want to get the word canoeist into as many of those possible. It's really
so
fun.
that they have to put it in his obituary. It wasn't until the 8th of May that the actual wreckage turned up on a beach, by which time he was obviously already presumed dead.
Fish food.
Indeed had been pronounced dead. There was one incredible quote from the article where they reported this, which is that Inspector Martin Cook of Hartlepool Police today confirmed that Mr. Darwin's family had attended to examine the canoe. He added, "It was in 2 or 3 parts. The family have attended. There's no sign of Mr. Darwin." Like, really
what? Where did they think he was going to appear?
We got the family in to check, and they've had a look at the 2 or 3 parts, and they've said
under the first, the second, or get this, the third.
They couldn't find him anywhere.
Wow. 2
you know,
or 3 is really funny as
Yeah.
well. 'Cause, like, it's such a small number that you would know. If it were in 2 parts,
Yeah.
that would be news almost.
Well, you say it's broken in half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a whole term for that.
Yeah. Police kind of incompetence, you wouldn't believe it, is something of a running theme in this story. But yeah, I mean, at this point, hindsight is 2020, right? So we flagged up some irregularities, but you know, at the time, it seemed at this point to be a pretty open and shut.
Previous, right? He'd never,
No.
gone canoeing he wasn't doing this all the time.
He'd never
Like,
faked his death before.
You'd catch
He'd
him
never
just,
done
like,
it before,
looking
yeah.
at you funny. He'd say something a bit embarrassing and then be like out the window, off to go and fake it.
Never before.
Yeah.
In fact, a quote that I didn't end up including, but am now, is that when the sort of trial was happening years down the line, one of the arguments that his lawyer used was, yeah, but for 51 years, he was a perfectly law-abiding citizen.
Never faked his death once apart from that one time. We all get a freebie. Come on.
So yeah, it seemed like an open and shut case of a man lost at sea, leaving behind a grieving widow and regrettably 2 sons.
Was there any, and maybe you'll come to this, but like, it's quite a strange. Was he a frequent canoeer? That would be my canoeist.
Well,
that'd be a first line of inquiry.
I didn't actually find that out, but there is a kind of adjacent fact coming up later on that implies that maybe they were. And if they were not, then the later fact is the one of the greatest piss takes of all time. Cool. Chapter 3 is Life Without John. So there's not loads, obviously, here, because a lot of this is kind of told in hindsight, because when you're dead, or presumed so, you don't tend to be in the news unless, you're a sort of Savile-esque figure. Or McCann, yeah. What we do know is this, that a death certificate was issued for him in February of 2003. So that's even before the canoe turns up.
Yeah.
And this, weirdly, this was allowed Anne Darwin to claim £250,000 of life insurance, as well as about 85 grand in various pensions.
Wow.
And that meant they could pay off the £130,000 mortgage on the properties that they had, which is good. That is good. All the while, instead of being dead, John Darwin was living literally at home.
The one place they never thought to check.
So what it was is that they owned these 2 properties that were next door to each other, and they'd knocked through a wall behind a wardrobe. So he would just live in the house next door, and then when it became nighttime, he would crawl out of the wardrobe back into his own bedroom with his wife, like a sort of reverse and shit version of Narnia.
Yeah, like a sort of death faking Mr. Tumnus.
Yeah. Yeah. But it didn't, unfortunately, take him very long to get bored of
I bet it was
home.
2 days, because that wardrobe thing seems like it's a good idea on paper, but the actual practicalities of lugging a wardrobe every day, like moving it out, pulling it back, or climbing through the clothes.
There was a hole in the back of the wardrobe.
Either way, I just think it's one of those things where you'd be like, what's the risk? What's the benefit? If no one's checking, we may as well. I reckon it lasted 3 days max.
Really, really no time at all. And what he decided was that he would just sort of go for walks. He would just go for walks out and about. And it was during one such excursion, again, less than a month or so after he was declared dead, that he bumped into one of his former tenants, leading to what I'm going to call one of the most British exchanges ever recounted in media.
Yeah.
A former tenant revealed he had bumped into Mr. Darwin in 2003 on the stairs of the block of bedsit flats the Darwins owned, next door to their marital home in Seaton Carew. Lee Wadrop said he had recognised Mr. Darwin and asked him, "Aren't you supposed to be dead?" To which Mr. Darwin replied, "Don't tell anyone about this."
Oh my God.
Then Mr. Wadrop had not told the police because he said, and I quote, he did not want to get involved.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which is such an amazing thing to say.
Yeah,
he's supposed to be dead. Do not tell anyone about this.
Sure.
And the guy was
Why are
like,
you not going to blackmail this guy straight away?
I know.
I'd be on that.
He's like your ex-landlord.
Yeah,
why the fuck are you not doing that? So, they were clearly looking for ways that they could, leave Seaton Carew and possibly
not very hard. But they could have left before doing this.
Well, you see, the thing is that they didn't want to just go to another part of the country. They wanted to move abroad.
Oh, right.
So what they did is they started to try and get some new identities for John.
Why didn't they fake his death abroad? Why not go first? Did they not think about how difficult it would be to do this part of it? They're very stupid.
No. Yeah, they really, really are.
Mm.
They are incredibly stupid. And we're going to find out so many more ways in which they are.
Cool.
But like, this is the part that's kind of most amazing, is that the police just truly like cannot have given one single fuck.
No.
Because if you had wanted to find him, all you had to do was go to his home. It was like Bin Laden. Like, like we spent all these years looking, and he was just at home, like in his house.
He was inside us all.
So they started to get false passports and identities for him, right? But they all, without fail, still used the name John. and they all still used his actual home address.
Wow, clever.
So one of them was John Jones, which incidentally was the name of a dead child they were aware of that he used to get that passport, and somewhat less dramatically, a library card. Which is just such a great, like, why are you taking that risk? Like, I know it's not a huge risk, but for what purpose?
The next, like, fucking James Patterson novel out.
Yeah. So he was also doing trips abroad with these passports, and he'd grown a huge beard as well.
Mad
as
that's
a
so
classic
easy.
disguise. Yeah, I know. It honestly, it's just like, it's such a throwaway line in all the articles about it. They're like, oh, and by the way, he got some fake passports.
Documents worked.
And at one point, he went to America to visit like a woman he'd just been chatting to online, and then just came back. Then he went to Gibraltar to try and buy, like, it's called like a catamaran, is it? Like one of those boats that you could go around the sea, go around the sea, go around the world on.
Yeah.
And it said, do
you want to do it again?
Robert Hopkin, a boat dealer who was handling the sale, said, I never guessed he could be hiding such a secret. Looking back now, he did act suspiciously, but he called himself Jones and had a passport to prove it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Detectives then kind of were piecing together his life from the John Jones thing when that got revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And as like a quick kind of flash forward, there were like loads of people suddenly, when they said that, like had possible sightings of him over the past 5 years in like Europe, North America, South America. And a police source at the time said, we got calls coming in from across the globe. God only knows where he's been.
He's never travelled more. Like, why did he not do this when he was?
I know,
not pretending to be dead.
He really seems to have done nothing, like while he was alive, and then all of this happened afterwards.
It's like you can imagine a film being made of it, but like framing it as like, this is all a good thing that this happened. It's like, you don't know you're alive until you're dead? Question mark.
Darwin to Jones.
Yeah.
In March of 2006, he participated in one of the greatest British activities of all time, which is signing an objection to one of his neighbours' requests for planning permission.
In the name of John Jones?
No, he used a different name, but as you may well know, you have to use, guess what? Your home address to do so. And again, no one
what's wrong with this guy?
By November 2007, their plan was that they were going to sell the family home, and they were going to move out to the not at all attention drawing or conspicuous location of Panama.
Very cool.
By the end of November, they had sold that home and they'd moved out to Panama City. Even more unbelievably, they purchased a plot of land near the Panama Canal for £200,000 with the intention of opening a resort where people could take canoeing holidays.
That's amazing. You learn from the best.
Yeah, it's like such an incredible...
Your canoe will end up in 2 or 3 pieces.
If this were sort of like a Tinder swindler style documentary, I would assume that this was a sort of brazen little like fuck you to the police. But I honestly just think that they were stupid enough to go...
I think he just liked canoes.
Yeah, he missed it. He hadn't been able to go out since he faked his death doing it, because his canoe/kayak was in 2 to 3 pieces.
To my mind, the canoe would be like the only place that he should have been able to go, like, because sea folk are already very superstitious, and if you saw a man who you knew from the news to be dead paddling a canoe, especially if he'd grown a big haggard-looking beard and looked like he crawled through a wardrobe twice a day, then you'd just be like, yeah, that sounds about right.
But
if he's just walking down the street, then it doesn't have any of the ghostly gravitas.
Yeah. Seafarers much more likely to become ghosts than, say, landlords or prison officers. So yeah, it seemed to be that it was their plan to like live out the rest of their lives in the Panamanian sun. However, they were brought to their knees by what I'm going to call, hesitantly, but with great belief, the two greatest forces known to man, especially here in Britain. And those are bureaucracy and a single mum. Which is how we enter chapter 4, the Durham Lazarus.
Wow, okay.
Now, they say, Isaac, and you'll know this because you're something of a mentalist yourself, aren't you?
People say it. People say
that the key to a good lie is not to oversell it.
True.
If you've got like too much extraneous detail, if you kind of know too much about the lie, it kind of looks a little bit too rehearsed, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it was probably likely that John Darwin had heard this advice, and it's for this reason that at 5:30 p.m. on December 1st, 2007, indeed.
Oh my God, what was I doing?
Now 57 years of age, he walked into a London police station and boldly announced, "I think I am a missing person."
Wow.
Which, again, he said, "I think I am," because his big claim and his huge plan was to say that he had amnesia and could not remember any events of the last 7 years.
Wow. That's such an interesting statement to make, that you think you're a missing person. It's like, by saying it, you are almost making it true. Like, if you think you're missing, then I feel like you are.
You possibly are.
I think, therefore, I am a missing person.
I think I am a missing brackets. I am. But it's also one of those things that by saying it, you sort of draw attention to the fact that you kind of do know what's been going on. Like, if you did not remember, you just sort of wander in and go, "I'm really lost, like, please help me." Yeah. Not, by the way, I think you might have seen me in the news.
I'm amazed at the brazenness. I'm amazed at, like, nothing about what we've learned of John so far implies that there's been a lot of forethought in any of these actions. But to go in and, this is like a turning point in his story and in his life. The preparation that they must have done for, like, right, what are we going to say? Let's rehearse it. We need to, obviously they're going to be able to trace this, and this. We need to have a good reason why those things happened. Like, I'm imagining that the tale he's about to spin is just incredibly complex and well planned and precise.
You're exactly right.
Perfect.
Okay, you're exactly right.
Like Ocean's 11 shit.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, one of the titles that I thought of having for one of these chapters at one point was Ocean's 2, because of this kind of like the power of the heist that they had.
And the pieces of the canoe, maybe.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll actually draw from something I was going to say later, just because you've brought it up, like this idea of, getting to the heart of the matter. What they had planned, right, was that they had to do this because they knew they were about to get caught, because they got caught again in much like Al Capone before them.
Around all the time, is it?
No, it was none of the wandering around. It was none of the using dead babies to get passports. It was that he'd applied for a Panamanian investor's visa, which they then suddenly changed the law on, which meant that you had to go through... You
have to be alive.
You had to... I'm so sorry, buddy. I hate to kick this back. No, it meant that their identities were going to go through an even more rigorous background check, and they were going to fail on the British side, which I noted here. Like, it's good to know that it's harder to get an investor's visa in famous tax haven Panama than it is to get a passport in the UK.
Very cool.
So they decided that they had to do something. Police subsequently discovered a file on their computers. Quote, the sophisticated deception is mapped out in a spreadsheet called Grand Plan, emailed from Mr. Darwin to his wife on August 30th, 2007, 3 months before he turned up at a police station. Green arrows depicted the best possible path. Red arrows show the worst.
That's amazing. Oh my God.
So basically
fucking good. They've got a flow chart.
Yeah. So like the idea was that basically he wanted to come back, feign the memory loss, pass a police check, get his real passport and license, and then just go back to Anne in Panama under his real name and then get the visa.
You can see sort of why he thought this might work, because if everything so far has been just completely fine, like you you would think you would just take the state to be the stupidest, most easily tricked fuckers on the planet. You'd be like, yeah, this would probably
100%.
be fine.
My literal note says dumb plan all told, but you can't really blame him for thinking he'd get away with it at this point.
He's been like positively reinforced so many times.
There was a quote from the Telegraph article about this that said, "But not for the first time, Darwin's scheme was half baked, as he had no way of explaining to police what he had been doing for the previous 5 years."
Oh no way at all.
I know.
I
Yeah.
just thought in a document called Grand Plan that would feature at least as a subheading somewhere.
It turns out that, unfortunately, instead, he just said he thought he would get away with saying, "I don't remember any of it. Anyway, can I go home now, please?" So he did that. He claimed to have amnesia, and he said specifically that he couldn't remember anything since a family holiday to Norway in 2000. So, which again, I kind of appreciate. It's a bit like sometimes what happens is the kids at school will tell a lie, and they do that thing of sort of trying to sow a seed to make it sound a little bit more plausible, where they'll answer 2 questions of the homework, and then they'll say like, "Oh, but unfortunately, like as you can see, I was going to do it, but then blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
And here it's like he didn't just go for so I was in this canoe and then here I am. Like he was like he went back just a little bit further.
Yeah. No, it's clever. It's smart.
Initially, the story in the news was one of like just total jubilation. The next day there was an emotional reunion between Darwin and his sons.
We got a bank holiday, I seem to remember.
Yeah. And the newspapers were filled with like joyous quotes from family members. One notably more muted quotation came from his dad, Ronald. This is the quote from the Guardian at the time. Darwin's 90-year-old father, Ronald, of Blackwall Colliery, County Durham, was too ill to speak about his son today. Quote, "I don't want to have any more strokes," he said.
Wow.
Earlier, he told the Evening Standard newspaper, "I always said to the police that there might be more to it than first appeared. When his canoe was found but he wasn't, it didn't seem right."
No, I can't agree with you there. No. That's not the whole of this story.
That's not how being lost.
Most people don't die at sea incidentally to being on the ocean.
Yeah,
he was lost at sea, by which I mean he had a heart attack in a boat and is now floating forever.
Yeah, it's like when you're lost at sea, like the kind of lost bit is normally part of that element. Like you don't die at sea and then just stick in your normally 2 or 3 part canoe
rather than on.
Yeah. Obviously, like word reaches Anne in Panama that John's turned up, and
she must be thrilled, is she? She
was. She played the part, surprised and delighted. And if anything, on that day, it seemed to be the perfect story.
Yeah.
This is where we enter Chapter 5, which I've called the Darwin's Award.
Nice.
So, the police were understandably, although I suppose given their level of interest so far, it wasn't guaranteed. They were understandably a little bit suspicious.
It's probably the memory thing, isn't it? Really, that's probably the bit where you're like, that's not true. It's not true that you don't remember anything.
It's probably false.
How did you remember
just
about
conveniently
what the police were?
How
did you remember to come here?
Like he gave them his name, his date of birth, his like previous addresses. It was just that small thing of the 5.5 years in which he'd been doing insurance fraud. Remember. I know, it's mad. It's mad. For instance, they actually had been investigating him for a few months now. The investigation started up again because in like September of that year, they'd received a tip from one of his wife's colleagues. This was sort of like a couple months before they moved to Panama, saying that she kept like taking like an unusual number of whispered phone calls, like just at her desk.
Oh my god!
I know.
Fucking hell! Like text messages existed at this point.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Not that long ago.
No,
like, you don't need to be talking to your dead husband in a public place.
It's so funny that like there was a quote from one of these articles, and it said something like that the anonymous person who gave him the tip said there was something about the way that she was speaking that made it sound like the person she was talking to was dead, which is just like just a fantastic house. I know, but again, it's amazing that they were right, like in a way.
Yeah.
His own family didn't help much either. Mr. Darwin's aunt, Margaret Burns, 80, tells the Evening Standard,
He's never died.
I mean, pretty much, yes. Like she said, this is such a great quote. Most of the family believed that the trauma of nearly drowning was enough to make him lose his memory, but I'm not so sure. I'm a cynic now. To be honest, I don't believe he ever got wet.
Ever got wet in his fucking life? I don't believe he's ever been on the sea. I don't think he knows what it is.
I don't think he's seen the ocean.
That's amazing. He's
So-
a landlord, not a sea lord. Simple.
They should have
Can't
come to
fool
me.
me.
Should have come and asked me. I'd have told him
So
from day
fucking
one.
good.
So the police were suspicious, but they didn't have yet any kind of concrete evidence
That's
that they
weird, because
needed.
they could have asked anyone who lived anywhere near him,
They
have you
could've-
seen this man at any point in the last 5? Oh, yes, every day.
If they spoke to Mr. Wadrop and said,
Fucking
"Did you ever
hell.
bump to your ex-landlord on the stairs?"
Oh, yeah,
but
all the time.
He said
He
not to
came
mention
over.
it, lads. So unfortunately, by just December 5th, just 4 days after his
Damn.
reappearance, that had all changed, and Mr. Darwin was arrested in
You've-
Hampshire.
You've got to know that, like, the way the economy was at this point, right? Are we pre-recession? Right?
Yeah, just about. It's
Pre the
2007. It's 2008 is the crash,
We
isn't
were
it?
riding that bubble. I've got to imagine that some like enterprising production companies, at least one, were out there trying to option the rights to this feel-good story of a man who
100%.
goes missing. And on December 1st,
Tom Hanks was booked.
great. Right, we're going to get Hanks, start growing that beard. Yeah, have you been in a canoe? Yeah. Oh yeah, you did Castaway, of course.
Fantastic.
Was that
Kayak,
a canoe? Was that
sorry, kayak,
Yeah,
kayak,
my
yeah,
mistake.
yeah.
No, you won't need Wilson for this one. And then like December 4th, they're like checking the news. Like, about that whole project. We got a different direction. It turns out it was all a lie.
Now we
He's not
need to
making
get.
a film.
Hanks has got to be out. He can't play
He's
the
not
evil
got- He
dude.
hasn't got a devious face.
We've got to
He
get
just
like
hasn't.
Walken in to
Yeah.
to do it. Now you might be thinking, well done, the old Thin Blue Line.
No,
Great
I
police
wasn't. I
work.
wasn't.
Great police work. I
I've
was going to
actually
say,
never thought that.
I know, and I was going to say, if you are like, please do stop listening to the show.
Yeah.
But in fact,
Police
from the
have never
beginning,
solved a single crime in the history.
well, they don't solve crime. That's not really why they're there. In fact, from the beginning, they didn't really know what to do, as we've clearly seen. And they later claimed that had he not returned voluntarily to the country, they may never have found him or been
very
able to
cool.
do anything about it.
Hmm.
Indeed, the media were keen to point out that they had been pretty much leading the investigation. One of the guy, Detective Inspector Hutchinson, asked whether the investigation was being led by the media. He said journalists had more, quote, latitude than the police.
So
The press have certainly been providing us with a lot of information, he said. But
That's the way it should be. Yeah.
as teased before, the kind of killer blow didn't come from the police or from the press. It came from one suspicious, anonymous single mum with a gut feeling and a broadband connection.
Okay.
And here I think, and I mean, there are a couple of other things. I mean, the document entitled Grand Plan,
That's quite incriminating.
That's
there
quite
are very
incriminating.
Few, there are very few grand plans that are not evil in nature. Like
Yeah.
you rarely are like, oh, I've got this grand plan, especially as a document. Like if I got an email with a grand plan PDF, I would assume it was about napalm.
It probably wasn't a grand plan to like give money to the homeless.
No.
So yeah. So there, like I say, there's lots of things that are very incriminating, and there's lots of aspects that are particularly stupid. We are, however, going to get now to what I'll comfortably call the stupidest part of it. Right. So it turned out that the mum in question turned to the internet after becoming suspicious about the story, which had gripped the world's attention, and she admitted that her skepticism had paid dividends. This mum told the Mirror that the Darwins should be nominated for a, quote, World's Dumbest Award.
If only there were a name for that.
Well, yeah, but also the thing that's funny is that like the way that they kind of like punctuated it in the article, it made it sound like they should be nominated for the World's Dumbest Award, not the World's Dumbest Award.
Yeah.
I'm a skeptic, she said. Nobody can simply vanish in this day and age. There has to be something, some sign.
Okay. I love the inquiry of this. Yeah, that basic premise of reality of like there can be nothing without explanation. That's a great way to live.
It's good. And you may be thinking, given all this, like what kind of incredible snoopery did this unnamed hero
what did it
engage
require?
in?
What did it take?
Like, do you think hacking into their bank and checking
or
the
maybe,
transactions?
like, maybe going around and bribing all of the ex-tenants and
maybe she had sort of like access to state-of-the-art mobile GPS tracking, something like that.
or
a cyber heist of hitherto unseen deftness.
Mhm.
And I quote, It was found by an anonymous woman after she typed the words John Ann Panama into Google, where there was a photo of the pair of them smiling together, available on the website movetopanama.com. And have you got Messenger open? Because I'm sending you now the photo in question, which is
certain
just a beautiful
I will have
piece
seen
of
this
history.
photo. It's gonna like come back into my memory when I see it. I'm excited.
It'll be like Sartre, and
it's so good. It's on movetopanama.com.
Like honestly, so good. As she says, and as you'll see, not only were they photographed, but the date was actually on the picture.
Oh man, she fucked it.
She then forwarded the picture to both Cleveland police and the Mirror. She said when she forwarded the picture to detectives, she was told, "You're joking."
Oh come on, pull the other one.
But this is the latitude that single mums have that the police don't. The police are not allowed to. They're not allowed to use Google to solve crimes. The police, they can't.
They have to use that fake one that's like spider search in every film. Spider searcher.
So at this point, Anne was still out in Panama, and a bunch of kind of plucky journalists confronted her about it. She said she kind of like admitted straight away that it was them. But it did lead to what I think is one of the greatest journalistic interactions of all time. This was a quote. This was a bit I had never heard before, because it was a quote that was kind of buried in an article that had been kind of archived from a now dead news source, right? Mrs. Darwin, who emigrated to Panama 6 weeks ago, also told the Sun newspaper, "I can't believe that picture of me and John has come out." When asked specifically how she would explain the photograph, she told the paper, "I won't."
I won't.
Which it is like gold.
I won't now, and I won't.
What a queen! Ever. I will not explain the photograph and describe the situation as a quote mess.
You've got to double down at this point. You've got to say, that is a photo of me, I guess, but I don't remember that ever being taken. Like,
I
was not mentally there.
You may as well both run the memory grift.
Yeah.
Than like one of you being like, I don't remember a thing, and the other one being like, well, no, that definitely was us. We did do that.
I'd start failing to remember things that were happening like moment to moment in front of me. Like I'd be like, oh, hello. Oh, goodness. Like you just keep like resetting.
Fucking like part of the ship, part of the crew. Yeah. Just kind of you know my name. Sell it. So yeah, she was pretty much at that point kind of forced to return to England and be questioned also, which kind of turned out to be, you wouldn't believe it, a pretty futile process, as both of them have been described by almost everyone who's ever been involved with them in any way as compulsive liars.
Oh no, but very bad ones.
She variously claimed, first of all, that the life insurance claim was in good faith. Mm-hmm. She thought he was dead and had no idea that he was going to turn up ever again. Then she changed that to he did genuinely disappear but turned up at her door 11 months later, and that's when she found him again. Mm-hmm. Then she claimed she didn't have any knowledge of the plan whatsoever. Then she claimed that she knew all about the plan, but he was coercing her. Then it turned out that she was the one who booked his ticket from Panama back to Britain, and she claimed that it was because he was missing his sons. But yeah, then it turned out actually it was because of the kind of visa laws in Panama.
Yeah.
As you can kind of imagine, the police were not their biggest fans.
Well, they've made them look like mugs for half a decade.
Yeah, they really have. And I suppose for that we could say congrats.
It's
Darwins.
So close to being a story where I fully support them. Like ripping off insurance companies, great. Making the police look like the fucking idiots that they are, great. It's just the fact that they're scummy landlords to start with. It's like it couldn't have happened to
worse
a less
people.
Perfect victim.
And this is definitely a view that came to be shared by the police. Initially, they were a little bit more sympathetic towards her. Mm-hmm. But then we get a quote, and I mean, that our stance as a show is ACAB. Sure. But I am going to make an exception for this one copper. Detective Inspector Andy Greenwood, who led the investigation, said that when the police started looking into the case, he initially thought the sons must have known about their parents' plan. Mm-hmm. Like, they couldn't have pulled it off without them. Turns out that they did. But then he goes on to say this, which I think is one of the most, it's like the most brutally honest I've ever heard a policeman be about someone he was investigating. Says, but the more we investigated it, the more we realized that they did not know. they'd gone through a particularly horrendous sequence of events. For her to say, I had to go along with it because John told me, I just don't know how any mother could do that. She was out and out despicable, and I don't have the time of day for her.
Wow, fucking dunking on the defendant left, right, and centre.
It's so good. Like, talk about like influencing a jury or something. Just like she was scum. And
go fuck herself.
I wouldn't
she'd been on that canoe.
I wouldn't kick her if she was shit on the bottom of my shoe.
It's amazing.
We're going to move into the final chapter now,
Mm-hmm.
which I've called Chapter 6, History Often Rhymes. Now, like the actual details of their trials are kind of sparse and a bit like underwhelming, but suffice it to say, you wouldn't believe they both did end up going to prison. I know.
What are the odds?
I know. The funny thing is that he was sentenced to 6 years and 3 months, and she got 6 years and 6 months, which is like was some kind of weird quirk about the actual crimes that each had committed,
right,
and like whose name was on the stuff. But like, it's just very funny to me that she got like 3 months more. I think that she got 3 months more because everyone was fucking sick of all her lying. They're just like, fuck's sake.
They put her in 3 months early.
Yeah.
For the court date. They're like, you can't listen to that.
They actually let her out 3 months after him. I think they both got out in 2011, but he was out in like Jan and she got out in April.
So they're free today if they're alive.
They are indeed, and that we'll come to that in just a second.
Okay.
So they had to pay back all the money and assets, and as of 2014, they had none left to speak of. They paid back over like £500,000.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the romance itself between them after 38 years of marriage did come to an end.
No. Oh, that's sad to hear.
After seeing a psychiatrist while she was in prison, she decided to divorce John Darwin.
Damn.
Since she's been released, she's given quite a few TV interviews and released a book about what's happened. Mm-hmm. So she has kind of gone the McCann route, you could say. Okay. She's also the only one who's still in touch with their sons. They've sort of forgiven her, unlike the
Weird.
court.
That's wild.
But
you wouldn't.
No, simply
possible.
would not. But they haven't forgiven John. Now, John, he's had a more colourful time of it since leaving prison.
I strongly bet he's DJing like at club nights for freshers and shit like that.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that somehow you've managed to miss this story, because it's going to make this the greatest little reveal. John, yeah. So in 2013, just 2 years after he got out, he broke the terms on his parole by going on a date with a Ukrainian woman who was 37 years younger than him, who he met on a website for women to meet rich older men.
Is he a rich old man? I thought he had to give all his money back to
this is the thing.
Insurance company.
He apparently told her that he had over 240 women who wanted to meet him, which is such a specific number.
That's so strange.
In return, she told him that she had no interest in ever seeing him again. So that didn't work out.
That's very good.
He later moved to the Philippines, where he did actually remarry, and he met his current wife, Mercy May. And this is kind of where we do come to the final revelation, I should say, of the saga, which is the question on everyone's lips. Yours, the listeners. It was even on mine, which is, Declan, why are you bringing all of this up now? Why dredge up the past? You know, is it because of the upcoming ITV drama about the Darwins, starring huge cunt and Corbyn libeller Eddie Marson?
No way.
It's not for that reason. No, it's not. It's because of an article from the Daily Mirror published just 3 days ago on the 24th of March 2022 with the headline, Canoeman John Darwin, quote, on his way to fight in Ukraine, according to his wife.
No,
that's right.
He's off to Ukraine.
He's off to the Ukraine
to
join the old Azov battalion and take on the Ruskies. But why, Declan? Why would 71-year-old John Darwin make such a decision?
He's going to teach them all to play dead.
What could possess a man in his position to make such a ludicrous decision? Well, perhaps we can find some answers, Isaac, in a quotation from the Mirror article, which I think is a perfect line to kind of round out the story on. And it's a quote here from his new wife. Mm-hmm. In a series of bizarre messages, his second wife, Mercy May Avila Darwin, 48, claimed John, who faked his own death at sea in 2002, would
One of those parentheses.
Yeah.
John,
What a
just
clause.
like, I would always refer to him as that. Have you met my friend John, who faked his death on the canoe? And he doesn't?
You have to say it in the like terms and conditions voice.
Can you pass
though.
me the salt, John? Who
My
faked
friend
your
John, who faked his own death at sea in 2002, would fight the Russians in Ukraine. When asked about the danger, she added, "Yes, dangerous for the Russian when he shoot them.
Wow.
He will have bulletproof vest and good life insurance. Good for me." That's right. He
He's doing
is
it
doing
again.
the exact same thing.
Ukraine is the new ocean. You heard it here first. He's canoeing on land.
First of all, who in the name of God
That's
has
amazing.
given him life insurance?
Yeah, that can't be right.
Like,
They must be paying a premium of like more than that you could ever possibly extract from this policy.
like there are so many things that will have you precluded from having life insurance, and I think possibly the first one on the list is like, have you ever actively defrauded somebody?
$250,000. Oh, you have? Okay, probably
Yeah.
no more life insurance for you.
Okay, that will count against you, but let's see how the rest
Let's
of
put it into the
form-
machine. Oh, it's
Yeah.
blown up. Oh, it's fired me as well. Bad luck.
for even entertaining this notion.
The whole branch has been closed down, John. Hope you're happy. Off we all go.
So yeah,
That's amazing. So we're going to
John-
hear that he's died in the next couple of days.
oh, like almost certainly we
Possibly,
will be finding
if
out.
we just draw the episode out long enough, we'll get a
Like-
breaking news tweet.
Yeah, we'll get a little thing
Died
saying
doing what he loved.
poor Dom faking his own death.
It would be amazing if in the service of that's a good story, right? That's like a Tales of the Unexpected thing. Someone who's faking their own death, dying
Yeah.
whilst trying to fake their own death.
Well, like I said, this news story from the Mirror was 3 days ago.
Mhm.
But there was another story today that was published in a couple of places, but unfortunately, those two places were the Daily Mail and GB News, so I didn't
Oh, that's a
I
shame.
didn't open them up. But that basically the memoir reveals that he almost did die during the initial like faking of his own death. That it was
What?
like so dark that he nearly died in the canoe.
But he didn't. If it was so dark, he didn't need to go on it. He didn't need to actually do that bit.
He
That was
needed
all
to be seen. He needed to be
superfluous.
seen heading out.
But no one's. Yeah, he could have just gone to the beach and sat in the canoe and gone 10 yards out and sat
Just
there.
like going to someone, just going, I'm going to get in my canoe now.
Truly, no one. Like at no point in the story do I remember eyewitnesses being an important part of like.
There was
oh,
it was literally the
definitely-
very first detail was like he was seen leaving at like 8
Yeah.
a.m.
And then
leaving
once
out
you've
to
left,
sea.
once you've left out
Yeah,
to sea,
what he
just
did is-
sail all the way back round.
I think he tried to go out and then come back to a pier, and then like there was a bit of mist, and then he lost the pier, and then was completely lost in terms of direction. Which,
Stupid
like,
John.
I imagine,
Stupid
like,
alive, John.
I'm just thinking of like imagining Anne like waiting for him at the point where they were supposed to meet, just being like,
That's a weird one. Oh, well,
yeah, because like
50,000 will fix that.
yeah, it turns out like despite all her claims of how long it took for him to reappear and like reveal the whole scheme, that actually she just went and picked him up in the car and dropped him off
Amazing.
somewhere else
Amazing.
immediately afterwards.
So good. Wow. Well, what an amazing grift and what a tale of twists and turns like the waves of the ocean that John was on for mere moments before sadly dying.
As his aunt said, he didn't get wet.
Yeah, that's so good. I guess we'll have to now keep an eye out for any updates. That's sort of, part of our journalistic contract is that
Yeah.
you've said that for the rest of your life, you'll always tell us if he's alive or not on every episode.
That's it.
Maybe it's a new feature.
I'm your resident Darwin
Canoe
dude.
corner we could have.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
probably some fan theory that could emerge that John Darwin and John Darkins are the same person as well. That
It was so
subbed
hard for me
across.
not to say Darkins
Yeah,
for
'cause
so much
he's
of this.
our John, isn't he? At the end
Yeah,
of the day?
he'll always be our number
He'd
one John.
never do that.
I-
Either. That's one of
I am
my things.
constantly searching Twitter to see if he's back anywhere. Made
Well,
a new
he's
account.
unlike John, he is
He's
dead.
dead. He is
And
as
not by
dead as
canoe.
anyone. No,
By some of the most natural causes that have
Well-
been killing old weird men.
the thing is that the thing about Darkins is he wouldn't ever go anywhere foreign.
That's
so
true,
like
yeah,
he
yeah.
would still he very much did live in his own wardrobe.
That's true.
I'm fairly certain.
Died on a canoe in a pool in his own backyard. It's a very upsetting story. Well, look, thanks for filling us in, and
That's
I
all
look
right.
forward to hearing what life has in store for John next. He's an ever changing character in some ways, and in other ways, just doing the same grift. Again,
just
same grift, different landmass.
2 decades on, who knows? Like, he's got new opportunities for
He will
death
have,
faking.
yeah, he will have had plenty of time in prison to plan the sequel, and I imagine
Yeah.
it's going to be full of twists and turns. It'll be like the Riddler in the new Batman.
This time he probably won't agree to be photographed for a real estate website.
Yeah, move to Ukraine.com. he's going to ask very politely if they'll take the photos down that he took.
Yeah, sorry,
snaps.
I completely
I
forgot.
keep doing this. Damn.
I completely forgot. If you could just nip that one in the bud.
It's fine. Just you don't have to delete it. Just sort of crop me. Like half the face is fine. No one will recognize.
Yeah, or like if anyone asked you doing some sort of Weekend at Bernie's thing, I was dead. You're just sort of propping me up for old time's sake.
Look, that has been an episode of That's a Shame, and it's been one of our investigative ones. You know, these come every so often. We've got big stories to tell and to share, and let's just say it. You're welcome. You are welcome.
You really are.
Free content. Now, if you're sitting there ashamed of yourself that you just ingested all of this and given us nothing in return, then let me tell you, there are ways to fix it.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
You can allay that guilty conscience. Quiet the Jiminy Cricket in your soul from kicking off with a weird voiced song by popping over to shame.city/review and leaving us a lovely 5-star review. Doesn't cost you anything but your precious finite time. And share some of that with us, won't you? We'd appreciate that. It does something for the show. Nothing much, but it probably does something a little bit nice. We've also got a Patreon over at patreon.com/shamecity.
We do have that.
The content has been popping off. There's no two ways about it. We've got this brand new show, Cups. We're 2 episodes in. We're recording a 3rd today. And they go up kind of weekly at the moment. I don't know if it will always be weekly, but at the moment it is. So enjoy that while it lasts. And for $5 a month, which is what? Like $1.25 an episode on average.
Nothing.
Yeah, it helps us out in a big way. What else have we got going on, Delk?
We've got a Discord, haven't we?
Oh, yes.
We've got a Discord over at shame.city/Discord. That's where you can find that. And there's all sorts of people over there sharing all sorts of things. And if you do that, then what will happen is you get a little notif. It pops up on your phone if you've got those enabled, as obviously you would for our Discord, even though for some reason I don't. You get a little notification every time we go live over at shame.city/Twitch, where there's been all manner of streaming going on.
Oh, it's crazy. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. is our usual schedule, and it's been fun. We're pretty consistent these days.
It's been crazy productive.
Last of all, Big Bad Books is our other show, shame.city/books, I think, is where you can find it, or just search Big Bad Books wherever you get podcasts. Good stuff. We're going through Ready Player 2, 1 chapter at a time, and it is it's very good.
As the title of the show suggests, it's big. It is a book. We'll leave the rest to you.
Thanks for tuning in. Until the next episode, I've been Isaac. You've been
me. I've been Declan.
And we'll see you on the high seas.
Stay safe, guys.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities, Mother Nature's recipes that bring the bare necessities of life. Wherever I wander, wherever I roam, I couldn't be fonder of my big home. The bees are buzzing in the tree to make some honey just for me. The bare necessities of life will come to you. necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean the bare necessities, oh, Mother Nature's recipes that bring the bare necessities of life. Wherever I wander, wherever I roam, I couldn't be fonder. My new home. The bees are buzzing in the tree to make some honey just for me. The bare necessities of life will come to you. The bare necessities, the bare